Science fiction has always promised us glimpses of the future, but the greatest sci-fi films don't just dazzle with spaceships and monsters. They leave you gasping at the finish line, questioning everything you thought you knew. Sometimes it's a single image, sometimes a whispered revelation, but the best endings hit like a gut punch that echoes for decades. So, which movies pulled the rug out from under audiences in ways no one saw coming? Let's dive in and find out. Planet of the Apes, 1968. Few endings in movie history can match the sheer shock value of Planet of the Apes. Picture it. Charlton Heston, sweaty and battered, crawling across a desolate beach. He's escaped slavery, defied a council of gorilla judges, and fought for freedom against a world ruled by apes. For almost 2 hours, audiences in 1968 had been swept into this strange dystopia, never truly questioning where it might be set. Then comes the reveal. Rising out of the sand is the Statue of Liberty, broken and half-buried. It wasn't another planet. It was Earth all along. This twist didn't just shock, it devastated. Cold War tensions, nuclear fears, and social unrest were already rattling America. Suddenly, this wasn't just pulp entertainment. It was a nightmare mirror of the country's own path of destruction. Rod Serling, who co-wrote the script, was no stranger to gut-punch endings from his Twilight Zone days, but even he had to fight to keep the Statue of Liberty reveal intact. Studio executives thought it was too dark, too political, but director Franklin J. Schaffner doubled down, and history was made. The ending worked because it wasn't random. Every step of the story built toward this revelation, the ruins of humanity hidden beneath ape culture, the forbidden zone littered with secrets. When Heston collapses, screaming at mankind's folly, audiences felt the echo of their own anxieties about nuclear war and human arrogance. It turned a smart but pulpy sci-fi adventure into a timeless cautionary tale. Even now, more than 50 years later, that final shot remains one of the most iconic images in cinema. You don't just remember Planet of the Apes, you remember that ending. And in one breathtaking moment, sci-fi proved it could be just as haunting and provocative as any so-called serious drama. Soylent Green, 1973. If Planet of the Apes made us fear our future, Soylent Green made us gag on it. Set in a suffocating vision of 2022, the film paints a grim world where overpopulation has choked cities, climate collapse has wiped out resources, and people live shoulder to shoulder in endless slums. At the center of it all is Charlton Heston again, this time as a weary detective trying to solve a murder linked to the powerful Soylent Corporation. Their miracle food, Soylent Green, is supposed to be humanity's last hope, but as Heston's investigation digs deeper, something doesn't add up. The corporation is too secretive. The supply lines don't make sense. His mentor, played by Edward G. Robinson in his final role, delivers a heartbreaking performance as a man too tired to keep living in a broken world. And then comes the line that burned itself into pop culture: Soylent Green is people. Audiences in 1973 were floored. Up until that moment, the film had been a gritty detective story dressed in sci-fi clothes. The reveal turned it into a horror story about corporate greed and humanity's willingness to eat itself, literally and metaphorically, just to survive. In a decade obsessed with conspiracies and corruption, the movie hit like a punch in the throat. The ending wasn't subtle, and that was exactly the point. The revelation screamed at audiences, if you keep exploiting the planet, if you let the powerful hoard what's left, this is where we end up. Critics at the time were divided, but viewers couldn't forget the raw desperation in Heston's voice as he's dragged away, trying to expose the truth. It was a finale designed not to comfort, but to disturb. Soylent Green became one of those films where even if you never saw it, you knew the ending. It seeped into jokes, parodies, and late-night talk shows. But strip away the pop culture winks, and the core remains terrifying. It's not just science fiction. It's a nightmare about what happens when human greed outruns human compassion. And that, more than anything, is why its ending still shocks. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. Remakes rarely outdo the original, but Philip Kaufman's 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers did something few films ever manage. It took a familiar story and twisted it into one of the most chilling finales in sci-fi history. For most of the film, Donald Sutherland's character Matthew struggles to survive as San Francisco falls to the pod people, alien duplicates who replace humans with soulless copies. You think maybe, just maybe, he'll find a way out. Maybe humanity has a fighting chance. Then comes the ending. Nancy, played by Veronica Cartwright, spots Matthew in broad daylight. She's relieved, desperate for an ally. She calls to him, and then he turns. His mouth opens wide, and from deep in his throat comes that horrific, inhuman shriek, the sound the pods use to identify humans. It's a moment that shattered audiences. The film doesn't just end in despair, it ends with betrayal, with the collapse of hope itself. Why did it hit so hard? Because it reflected the paranoia of its time. In the late 1970s, after Watergate and Vietnam, people didn't trust institutions. They didn't trust their neighbors. The idea that anyone, even your closest friend, could secretly be the enemy resonated like few other metaphors. Kaufman amplified the dread with eerie sound design, muted colors, and a refusal to offer any safe resolution. Unlike the 1956 original, which at least teased a warning to the government, the 1978 version slams the door on hope. Humanity doesn't get to win, it doesn't even get to fight back. The aliens win, and they win in silence. That final scream from Sutherland isn't just shocking, it's iconic. It turns the hero into the monster and leaves the viewer haunted long after the credits roll. The movie became a benchmark for downbeat endings, influencing horror and sci-fi alike. Even now, decades later, the moment still works. You brace yourself, but when that scream erupts, your stomach still drops. That's not just a twist. That's a masterclass in despair. The Thing, 1982. John Carpenter's. The Thing is pure paranoia distilled into celluloid. A group of men trapped in the icy wilderness of Antarctica stumble upon a shape-shifting alien that can perfectly mimic any living creature. From the opening dog sequence to the gruesome transformations, the film keeps ratcheting up the tension, but nothing unsettles more than the ending. After a brutal final showdown, only two men remain: Kurt Russell's R.J. MacReady and Keith David's Childs. The camp is burning. The alien might be dead, or it might not. Both men sit in the freezing dark, exhausted, suspicious, and defeated. Neither trusts the other. And then MacReady mutters, "Why don't we just wait here? See what happens." Fade to black. That ambiguity drove audiences crazy in 1982. Who was the Thing? Was one of them infected? Were both human? Carpenter refused to answer. He wanted viewers to leave unsettled, their imaginations gnawing at the uncertainty. The ambiguity turned what could have been a neat conclusion into a never-ending debate. Fans have argued for decades, scrutinizing every shot, every breath of steam, every flicker of firelight for hidden clues. The ending hit especially hard because the film was already relentless. By the time MacReady and Childs share that last drink, the audience is as exhausted as they are. Instead of relief, Carpenter offers only dread. And in the middle of the Cold War, when nuclear annihilation and mistrust defined the global mood, the finale felt eerily appropriate. You can fight all you want, but in the end, survival is uncertain. At the time, critics hated it. The film bombed at the box office, overshadowed by the optimism of E.T. But time flipped the script. The Thing is now hailed as a masterpiece, and its ending is a big reason why. It refuses to let you go. It sticks in your head like a splinter, forcing you to imagine what happens after the screen goes black. Sometimes, the scariest ending is the one that never gives you answers. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. If there's one sci-fi film that defined shocking ending in a completely different way, it's Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. Forget explosions or screams, this one hit audiences with pure cosmic bewilderment. For nearly 3 hours, viewers are immersed in an ultra-realistic vision of space travel, with astronauts, artificial intelligence, and the mysterious black monoliths guiding humanity's evolution. But nothing could prepare audiences for the final act, Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite. Astronaut Dave Bowman approaches the monolith near Jupiter. Suddenly, reality collapses. He's hurled through a kaleidoscope of light, color, and incomprehensible imagery. For minutes on end, the audience experiences a sensory overload unlike anything put on screen before. And then, the quiet. Bowman finds himself in a strange, ornate bedroom. He rapidly ages before our eyes, shifting from middle age to elderly to near death. As he reaches for the monolith one last time, he transforms into the glowing star child, a cosmic fetus hovering above Earth. The film ends without explanation. Back in 1968, this ending left audiences stunned, confused, and sometimes furious. Some walked out, some demanded answers, and others sat in awed silence. Kubrick never gave a straight explanation. Was it about evolution, rebirth, alien intervention, all of the above? The ambiguity forced audiences to grapple with their own interpretations. The shock wasn't about a twist in plot, but in perception. The film shifted from hard science to surreal mysticism, dragging viewers into a finale that defied logic. It turned cinema itself into an experience, something to feel as much as to understand. Over time, that ending became legendary. It proved sci-fi could be art, not just entertainment. It also launched decades of debates, essays, and late-night dorm room conversations. The image of the star child hovering above Earth remains one of the most haunting final shots in film. Kubrick didn't just end a movie, he cracked open the universe and left us staring into it, searching for meaning. The Mist, 2007. If you've ever wanted a movie ending to punch you square in the gut, The Mist delivers with a cruelty almost no one saw coming. Adapted from Stephen King's novella, Frank Darabont's film sets up a classic survival horror, a group of townsfolk trapped in a supermarket while a strange mist hides monsters outside. For 2 hours, audiences endure tentacled horrors, religious zealots, and the breakdown of order. But the real terror comes at the very end. Thomas Jane plays David Drayton, who finally escapes the store with his young son and a handful of survivors. They drive into the mist, hoping for salvation, but only find more desolation. Out of fuel, surrounded by eerie silence, David makes a desperate choice. He takes out a gun. The camera cuts away, but we hear 4 gunshots. His son, his companions, all gone. David is left alive, weapon empty, screaming in grief. And then, seconds later, the mist clears. The military arrives, burning through the monsters and restoring order. Rescue comes too late. That ending destroyed audiences. In King's novella, the story ends ambiguously, with David driving into uncertainty. Darabont, however, went for the jugular. Critics were divided, some called it unnecessarily bleak, others hailed it as bold. But no one walked away unmoved. Even King himself praised the new ending, calling it brilliant. Why did it shock so deeply? Because it violated an unspoken Hollywood rule, that children survive, that hope survives. The Mist doesn't flinch. It says survival sometimes means nothing, and desperation can lead to unbearable choices. That one moment reframed the entire film from monster movie to existential horror. Over time, the ending has become infamous, both hated and respected. Some viewers refuse to rewatch it because it's too painful, while others admire its uncompromising gut punch. Love it or hate it, The Mist left its mark. And if you've seen it, you'll never forget that brutal silence right before the tanks roll in. Donnie Darko, 2001. Few cult films capture the strange, head-spinning shock of Donnie Darko. Released in 2001, this time loop thriller blends teenage angst, sci-fi paradoxes, and a giant menacing bunny named Frank. It sounds ridiculous, but Richard Kelly's debut became a cult phenomenon precisely because of its unforgettable ending. Jake Gyllenhaal plays Donnie, a troubled teen who begins experiencing visions after surviving a bizarre accident. A jet engine crashes into his bedroom, but he isn't there. Guided by Frank, the eerie rabbit figure, Donnie wanders through time loops, alternate realities, and cryptic clues that suggest he's part of something much larger. The audience is never quite sure what's real. The ending flips everything. Donnie realizes he's caught in a tangent universe destined to collapse. To save everyone he loves, he has to return to the moment of the jet engine crash, but this time, he won't escape. He lies in his bed, laughing softly as the engine plummets. The house shakes, his family screams, and Donnie is killed. Reality resets. His friends, his girlfriend, his family, all are safe. They'll never know the sacrifice he made. It's a finale that stunned audiences, not with gore or spectacle, but with bittersweet tragedy. The entire film reframes in that instant. Donnie wasn't a mad teen. He was a reluctant hero, giving his life to restore order. The surreal imagery, the wormholes, the eerie 80s soundtrack, Frank's cryptic presence, all click into place with devastating clarity. The ending didn't just shock, it built a cult legacy. Fans debated theories, scribbled timelines, and dissected clues for years. Was Donnie truly in control? Was it fate? Was Frank his guide or his tormentor? Kelly never tied it neatly, which only fueled the mystique. What made Donnie Darko's finale unforgettable was its fusion of personal heartbreak and cosmic scale. It asked viewers to accept that the strangest journey could also be the most human. And for a generation of fans, that ending turned a weird indie flick into a legend. The Sixth Sense, 1999. Every so often, a film drops an ending so shocking that it changes how you watch the entire movie. That was M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. Before 1999, most audiences saw ghost stories as predictable. But when Bruce Willis's child psychologist met Haley Joel Osment's haunted little boy, no one expected the cinematic sleight of hand waiting in the final minutes. For most of the film, Willis's character, Dr. Malcolm Crowe, tries to help Cole, a boy terrified by his ability to see dead people. The story plays like a psychological mystery, with Malcolm seemingly guiding Cole through his trauma while dealing with his own strained marriage. Scenes of his wife ignoring him are brushed off as grief. His focus is on saving the child. Then the twist detonates. Malcolm is dead. He's been dead since the first act, when he was shot by a disturbed patient. All his interactions with Cole, all the silent dinners with his wife, all of it was filtered through denial. The boy wasn't crazy. He was the only one who could see the truth. Audiences lost their minds. People gasped in theaters, whispered to their neighbors, and immediately wanted to watch it again to catch the clues. And the clues were there. The lack of direct interaction with others, the chilling color motifs, the way doors never fully opened for him. It was all right in front of us, but invisible until the reveal. The ending wasn't just shocking, it was genre-defining. It cemented Shyamalan as the king of the twist and made "I see dead people" one of the most quoted lines of the decade. More importantly, it reframed the entire film as a meditation on grief and acceptance. Malcolm's journey wasn't about saving Cole, it was about letting go. Unlike some twist endings that fade with time, The Sixth Sense still holds up. Even if you know the truth, the craftsmanship is so meticulous that it's still gripping. It remains one of the great examples of how a single revelation can turn a solid film into an instant classic. 12 Monkeys, 1995. Time travel has always been fertile ground for shocking endings, but few films pulled it off with the haunting precision of Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys. Bruce Willis plays James Cole, a convict from a post-apocalyptic future ravaged by a deadly virus. He's sent back in time to stop the catastrophe before it begins, but like most Gilliam stories, nothing is straightforward. Cole's mind frays, his mission blurs, and paranoia runs high as the pieces click into place. The ending, though, is a masterstroke. Throughout the film, Cole has recurring visions of a man being gunned down at an airport while a child watches helplessly. We don't know who the man is or why the vision is important. It feels like a fragment of trauma. But in the finale, as Cole races to stop the release of the virus, the vision comes full circle. Security forces swarm, shots are fired, and Cole collapses. The watching child? It's a young James Cole himself, forced to witness his own death, a loop that defined his entire life. The shock isn't just that Cole fails, it's that his destiny was sealed from the very beginning. There was never a happy ending, never a way out. The virus is unleashed, the future unfolds exactly as foretold, and Cole's mission is revealed as tragic futility. Audiences expecting a heroic save instead got a devastating reminder of inevitability. The brilliance of the ending is in how it weaponizes déjà vu. That vision, seeded early, becomes the crushing payoff. It's not a twist for shock's sake, it's the story's cruel design snapping shut. In 1995, when most time travel movies wrapped with neat resets, Gilliam doubled down on despair and fatalism. The result? A finale that still lingers like a nightmare you can't shake. Dark City, 1998. Before The Matrix blew minds, there was Dark City, a noir-infused sci-fi gem that stunned audiences with its reality-bending finale. Directed by Alex Proyas, the film follows John Murdoch, a man who wakes with no memory in a city of perpetual night. He's pursued by mysterious pale figures known as the Strangers, beings who can alter reality with a power called tuning. The setup feels like a murder mystery, but the deeper John digs, the stranger things get. The shocking ending pulls the rug out completely. Murdoch discovers the city isn't even real. It's an artificial construct floating in space, controlled by the Strangers for their twisted experiments on human identity. Every night, the Strangers reshape the city and implant new memories, testing whether individuality can survive manipulation. The stars, the day-night cycle, even people's lives are all illusions. But Murdoch, unlike others, has developed tuning powers of his own. In the climax, he seizes control, defeats the Strangers, and remakes the city to finally see sunlight. For 1998 audiences, the revelation was mind-melting. The idea that your memories, your sense of self, could be manufactured overnight wasn't just creepy, it was existential horror. Add to that the revelation that the world isn't Earth at all, but a prison floating in the void, and viewers were left reeling. The ending worked because it blended despair and triumph. Humanity is trapped, yes, but Murdoch proves individuality can resist manipulation. He literally wills the sun into existence, a metaphorical victory against control. Some called it a masterpiece, others found it too bleak, but no one forgot that finale. Dark City didn't become a mainstream smash, but its influence was enormous. The Matrix arrived 1 year later, echoing its themes of false realities and human rebellion. Today, the final reveal still feels daring, reminding us that sometimes the scariest prison is the one you don't realize you're in. Coherence, 2013. Coherence may be a small-budget indie, but its ending is one of the most quietly devastating in modern sci-fi. The setup is deceptively simple. A dinner party with friends coincides with a comet passing overhead. Strange events start happening, power flickers, phones act up, and soon the guests realize multiple versions of themselves exist across fractured realities. It's the kind of high-concept premise that unfolds like a nightmare you can't wake from. The film focuses on Emily, played by Emily Baldoni, who becomes increasingly desperate as the night spirals into chaos. She discovers that whenever she leaves the house, she can stumble into another version of reality, one where the same dinner party is happening with slightly different outcomes. Paranoia mounts as the group encounters their doubles, and Emily hatches a plan. She decides to find a version of reality where her life is better, where she can simply replace herself. The ending is brutal in its subtlety. Emily attacks and incapacitates the better version of herself, slipping into that timeline to take over her spot. At first, it seems she succeeded. She joins the new group, fitting in as though nothing happened. But then her phone buzzes. The others hear it. Another Emily has called, exposing her intrusion. The look on her face says it all. She hasn't escaped. She's trapped in the infinite spiral of fractured realities, doomed to never find peace. What makes the ending so shocking is its quiet inevitability. There's no explosion, no monster, just the crushing weight of hopelessness. Emily's desperation, her willingness to erase herself, comes back to crush her. It's a modern sci-fi twist that stings because it feels so personal. Who hasn't fantasized about escaping into a better version of life? Coherence takes that fantasy and twists it into horror. For a micro-budget indie shot mostly in one location, the ending hit harder than blockbusters with 10 times the spectacle. It proved that sometimes the most shocking finale isn't loud or grand. It's a whisper that cuts to the bone. The Others, 2001. When the others hit theaters in 2001, audiences thought they were in for a stylish, haunted house story. Nicole Kidman starred as Grace, a stern mother living with her 2 children in a fog-covered mansion just after World War II. The kids suffer from a rare sensitivity to light, forcing the family to live in near darkness. Strange noises, whispers, and glimpses of figures plague the house, and Grace grows increasingly convinced they're being haunted. For most of the film, the setup feels familiar. A mother protecting her children from ghostly intruders, locked doors, unexplained footsteps, shadowy figures in the hall. But Alejandro Amenabar's film had a devastating trick up its sleeve. In the finale, Grace learns the horrifying truth. She and her children are the ghosts. The hauntings were living people who had moved into the house, and the family's reality was just a lingering echo of their tragic past. That revelation flipped the ghost story upside down. Suddenly, every eerie moment, the whispers, the sense of being watched made sense in reverse. The new occupants were the frightened ones. Grace and her children were the intruders, and the weight of Grace's own. Denial comes crashing down as she realizes the truth. Unlike a cheap jump scare, this twist left audiences chilled to the bone. It wasn't about a monster in the shadows, it was about grief, trauma, and the refusal to let go. The ending stunned viewers because it didn't just surprise, it forced them to rethink every scene. Like The Sixth Sense, the clues were hiding in plain sight. The locked doors, the way the servants behaved, the lingering sorrow hanging over the house. Once revealed, it all clicked. Kidman's performance sold the devastation, making Grace's acceptance of her fate feel both heartbreaking and inevitable. The others didn't rely on gore or spectacle. It delivered atmosphere, dread, and a finale that lingered long after the credits. In an era overloaded with loud horror, it proved that the quietest twist could still be the loudest scream. Sci-fi has always promised the extraordinary, but the endings we've explored show it can also leave scars. These weren't just shocking reveals, they were cultural earthquakes, scenes that rewired how we see storytelling itself. From apes on beaches to ghosts in fog, each finale left viewers stunned, disturbed, or breathless. So, which one rattled you the most? Drop your pick in the comments. Hit subscribe for more cinematic deep dives, and remember, sometimes the last 5 minutes are the ones you never forget.